Before we roll, I want just you to clarify what I would want to talk to Teto about. Um, Greetings and welcome back to Luminato Live, our behind-the-scenes look at the artists of the festival. I'm Derek Andrews. I'm the music curator for the festival and the David Pico Square stage here at the Hub. We're looking into a camera, but behind the camera, we're actually looking at World Cup soccer on a big screen and an enormous stage and setup. I have with me a couple of guys who've just come in from Colombia. Teto Ocampo, welcome.
Hi, thank you very much.
And Richard Blair.
Hi, thank you.
With his fabulous Colombian accent.
Although not in English. That's as London as it ever was.
Let's explain that right off the top, because I'm familiar with this group, one of my favorite bands of all time, because they came to Harbourfront Centre in a show many years ago. What, did we determine it was a dozen?
We thought it was 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Richard has been living in Colombia from London originally, and maybe you can just kind of help us out explaining a little bit of that. And
how that happened.
Your travel down to work with Toto La Mopacina?
That's right. I was working at Peter Gabriel's Real World studio in the west of England, and apart from working for him, we got put on rotation, the engineers on the Real World records. One day it's a band from Cambodia, the next is the Russian choir, and it was a lottery. It could have been any one of the four of us, but the manager said, right, you're doing a session with the Colombians. Who are they? I don't know, Toto La Mopacina. And we had the most fantastic week together. And she invited me down to Colombia to work as her live engineer and help her work on her next record. And I thought I was going to go for a month in 1993, and here we are 21 years later, and I'm living there and I haven't looked back really.
Let's talk a little bit about Toto, because in my work, in my education of Latin music, I got to know some of the North Coast Colombian musicians. Toto La Mopacina is what we're saying. We're kind of rolling it off quickly, because if you've not heard that name, that's her first name is Toto.
Yes.
La Mopacina is the second name.
From Mompos.
Okay.
Which maybe Teto can tell us about Mompos.
Super.
Mompos.
Also on the North Coast?
Yes, it's a very traditional city of mestizo people, and it used to be very, very rich and wealthy, like mansions, big houses, and because it used to be a port on the river, on the main,
the Magdalena.
The Magdalena River, and yeah, she's from there, and she's the main tradition singer in Colombia since 30 years or almost.
I know Patrona Martinez also from, would she be from the same town or region?
She's from the same, well, it's pretty close. She's from Palenquito.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an hour from Cartagena.
And I know your work also from a group called Bloque that you came from and have left behind. It was signed to David Byrne's Luaka Bach label for a period, and I think that's how we came in touch through the label and your work then playing guitar with Bloque.
Yes, I was the composer also, and yes, it was an experiment of making modern folk Colombian music.
Plugged in, sort of, because I remember David Byrne talking a lot about rock en español as it, an identity that it had, and there were a number of other Latin American groups that he signed to Luaka Bop. And that, how did you tell us a little bit about that experiment in Bloque? Because Toronto got to see that band. Did you tour the world? Did you have fun with it?
It was made of like half of the band was from Bogota, like urban people, and half of it were from La Costa, from the northern coast. It's like real. It's almost like Sidestepper, because we are like urban people and coast people too, and there is some things that we can't learn, like being from Bogota. I mean, doesn't matter how much you practice or study or research, there's something you can't grab, like, and these people have that, and it's
because of where they live and the culture that surrounds them.
Yes, and now we have Chongo playing the percussion. He's amazing. I mean, every concert is such a great experience playing with him, and the singers are all from the northern coast, and that makes something very special. That
we saw. For those of you who are seeing this interview in real time, the band arrived yesterday, and they did a performance. I was going to call it an acoustic performance, but it wasn't entirely acoustic, but a stripped down version of the band in Jason Collette's Basement Review that we've been rolling every night after the main shows are down. There's a place where the artists gather and the public mingle with artists who've traveled in, and we saw about 20 minutes of that. And would he have been the fellow on the far left that I saw, stage right?
Yes.
Playing the bigger round percussion unit?
Exactly. And it's like most drummers, I think, it is a calling, but those hand drummers are a particular type of people. And I talked a lot to Toto about this, and there's a whole spiritual area that I don't know a whole lot about, but those drums call it in, they bring it in, and it exposes the drummers to all these influences. And I was lucky enough, going back to that first session I did with Toto in 1991, to work with Batata, who's now passed, but he was a absolutely legendary hand drummer. And you shook the man's hand, and it was like feeling somebody's foot. It was full of calluses, and he's like a claw. But the most incredible drummer. And Chongo learnt from him, and a couple of others of the old masters. And he's already, he's 26, 27, but he's going to be one of these abuelos, one of these grandfathers, and one of these maestros before too long.
Certainly a lot of energy. We're going to use some terminology perhaps that you're not familiar with because we are bringing artists from Latin America, in this case Colombia. Colombia actually has the largest population here in Toronto of the Latin American immigrants.
Does it? I didn't know that. So we might see a Colombian.
There'll be a few
presence.
flags out tonight, I expect. And there's a lot of flags triggered by the World Cup as well. They're flying all over the city. But we don't get to see anything quite like what you are doing. And maybe you could take us back to the beginnings of shaping the sound. You went from working with a traditional artist and helping her make a recording to making a new band and a new sound by bringing the studio to traditions, and that's my summary of what it is. But it's
That's pretty close, really. And what you saw last night was the thing has come full circle. And the new record, we've managed to combine that original archaic folk thing, but it would only have been possible after the whole other journey. So we've come full circle, really. I think I wanted to make the record we've made now back in 1993, but I had no idea how to do it. So where it started was much more of a salsa thing, much less Colombian and Cumbia. And it was on the back, really, of the whole sampling and beat movement that started in Britain, especially in Europe, in the late 80s, beginning of the 90s. And where I worked in Bath, Bristol was very close. So
At Peter Gabriel's studio.
Yeah, so Smith and Mighty used to come in and mix, and I worked on those sessions. Massive Attack would come in and work. Tricky was doing his thing, Portishead were doing their thing. So there was a whole sound and a whole approach.
Sampling in particular?
Yes, sampling in particular, exactly. And the whole culture of a DJ knowing his vinyl so well that he'd go back and find the perfect break of this or the other. So...
And that's what you were doing, as well as being an engineer, you were DJing?
No, I was, at that point I was still just being an engineer, but after 1993 when I went to Colombia, I got into DJing in Colombia, but just at parties, just in my own house or in friends' houses or whatever. But what I did do was go out and dance a lot, and badly, but dancing to salsa.
In a fine UK tradition.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And realised that there's a whole style of Bogota especially. There's a very fine appreciation of salsa. It's a very Cuban sound they go for. And some real conocedores, as they say. They're people who really know their music. There's one particular bar that just closed called Son Salomé. And a lot of very cultured and educated people. But the best music. And I realised that DJs were using the same techniques as techno DJs, where they build the crowd, then they drop it unexpectedly and just working a crowd, using the same techniques. And I figured also that the music, all this classic salsa I was hearing for the first time, most of it, was using techniques of arrangement that were all about the dancer. So, what are the Los Cuatro M's, Motivo, Montuno, there's a form of salsa, and starts off kind of lyrical and a few too many chords and big melody, and then it gets simpler and simpler, and the last 2 or 3 minutes are just one chord, very simple vocals, they get shorter and shorter, the horns get punchier, and it's all about lifting the dancers. And I realised that you could do that with a horn section as much as a big beat, and it was all. And then I'd go back to London to visit every 6 or 8 months, and the drum and bass thing was kicking off properly. Goldie was doing his club Metalheads, where I went a few times.
Did you work there? Did you DJ there?
No, I just went and hung out and got into the full sort of... It's aggressive in the end. It's a very London and European thing, but the aggression, the sound, this eyeball melting bass. And but again, very, very powerful stuff. And for the first time since I was a kid, I hadn't felt that sort of energy in a scene. So going between the two places, I just sort of started to germinate an idea of, well, how would it be if you tried to mix that with this and do to salsa what people had done to funk to make it hip-hop. So that's where we started. We did a tune, I did a whole instrumental album first of all, which was not so Latin even. I mean, there was a fair bit of Latin stuff on it, but it was sort of experimental.
Before Sidestepper?
No, it was Sidestepper. It was the first album called Southern Star. It was all instrumental. There's a heavy sort of drum and bass tune on there. And then I played some of this to Iván, who's the figure we haven't mentioned yet, who was the other half of Bloque and who was the other half of Sidestepper for a long time. And I played it to him just to play it to him because we were friends after working with Carlos Vives. And he said we should put some vocals on that. And I said, really? Do you think so? And he said, yeah, let's do it. So that was the tune Logoso. And he and I wrote together for 2-3 albums. And he understood perfectly that what he was coming to the table to do was not write songs, because both of us understood that the thing that sampled dance music had in common with a lot of recorded dance music was form. So in the same way that a salsa band from the 70s would just get down to kind of one azúcar or one word or 2 words in a chorus, and that was all that was required. All we did was take off the front bit, the lyrical, wordy, chordy bit, and sort of simplify it and just go straight to the end of the form, where it's simple and repetitive. And Iván did some absolutely extraordinary work that we're still singing today, and just couplets almost. Hoy tenemos, mañana no sabemos. It's brilliant.
They become chants.
Absolutely right. That's exactly what they are. And between that and the beats that we put together, that we've toured them all over the world, and there's great scope for improvisation, and they can sound different on any given night of the week. So that was sort of phase one, I guess. I don't know which number it had, but
this story could go on for a long time, and we were kind of microing in on the making of the sound and the fusion. Maybe Teto could talk a little bit, and we only have so much time to talk about the music, but tell us a little bit about what we're going to see tonight, and perhaps even observations about being able to play it for a Canadian audience who will see you for the first time.
We're playing the best known songs of Sidestepper, like
the greatest
hits. Yeah, the hits. But we're playing a couple of new songs and a couple of folk songs too. And
last night it was very folkloric. There was you started off with just the vocal and percussion and a little bit of the Rhodes piano and
I think that's the new Sidestepper era. It's about being more acoustic, more spiritual, more ethnic and ancestral, and we're trying to change the way concerts are made. I mean, there's too many cables and things, and because when we travel, there are many situations, like non-professional situations, where we can play amazing music. It's incredible, like at the airport or whatever, at a parking lot, just like waiting for the visa or something. There's something that starts and no one can stop it. Just like the powerful music coming, and once we get into the stage, we play like the same thing.
A show.
Yeah, a show. So we're trying to change that and be more natural. Like even if we're playing at a big festival like this one, try to like be more like feel like at home. Like when we get together because of the birthday of someone or something, we play incredible, amazing music with no cables, just voices and drums and everything so natural. And we're trying to like start thinking about
how you do your music.
Yeah.
Well, it's. I hope we can get a taste of that tonight, and that we'll see a little bit about that. I know, Richard, from talking to you, that you are working on a record. We brought you here in part because the festival is Look at the Pan American Games coming here in 2015. We have artists from Brazil and Mexico and the Caribbean, First Nations, New Orleans, and we're delighted to have you guys representing Colombia and a modern sound, however you've chosen to interpret it. Maybe we can close off with a little comment about where the recording is going and when we might expect to see that in the future.
Sure. It's very close. When I go back tomorrow, that's the next thing on the desk, is to finish that record, and it's just a few tweaks to the mix really. 6 tunes are done and mastered, and I've just got to finish the other 4. But it's a radical departure in some ways and not in others. The way Teto was talking explained it beautifully. What were the words you used? It was fantastic. Archaic,
Ancestral.
And it's something that Teto's been a huge influence in this. That we feel we have to go back and back and back and back to a point that we can understand. But thank you, Derek. I just want to say thanks, Derek, because without you we wouldn't be here. And again, you showed a great leap of faith and imagination. You were the first person to bring this band to North America, the Americas, in 2003, and you've done it again. So thank you.
Super. Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay.